Tonight, a surprise turn of events in the trial of Jeremy Skibicki, who is accused of murdering 4 Indigenous women.
I made little felt dresses to represent the missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls, and so that we can all keep it close to our heart.
Red Dress Day events were held across the country on Sunday night.
Anything that happens in these men's lives, we're informed, and we are brought back to day one, from when we lost the most 2 important people in our lives.
And the Alberta Court of Appeal upholds the conviction of 2 men who killed 2 Métis hunters. Good evening, I'm Savannah Kelly. Welcome to APTN National News. We take you to Winnipeg now, where a court heard a surprise change of plea from the man accused of murdering 4 Indigenous women. Jeremy Skibicki had originally pleaded not guilty to the killings, but as TR Wheatley shows us now, all that has changed today.
Jeremy Skibicki's lawyer stood up in a courtroom where he said that his client has admitted to the killings of the 4 women back in the spring of 2022. Now, his defense lawyers will argue that he is not criminally responsible because of a mental disorder, or NCR. Both sides agree this question will be decided by judge alone. Now it's the Crown's job to prove intent of the killings and the accused's mental capacity. Some of the families and their supporters were seen leaving the courthouse headed for Camp Morgan, named after one of the women killed by Skibicki, to share the news. Morgan Harris's cousin spoke on behalf of all families.
You know, we've sat down many times with the Crowns. They explained everything to us ahead of time. So either way, we were confident, but, you know, even more happier now that it's judge alone.
In winter 2023, Camp Morgan was started at the Brady landfill outside the city, where the partial remains of Rebecca Contois were found. The camp was set up after news that the bodies of 3 other women, Morgan Harris, Mercedes Myron, and yet to be identified woman given the name Buffalo Woman from Community, may be in the Prairie Green landfill. For over a year, the province and the federal government fought about who would foot the bill for the search. Just last month, they announced a combined $40 million for a search that's yet to happen. Despite not having the remains of all the women in this case, it was interesting to note what the Crown said inside the courtroom, that all 4 killings are similar in nature. Outside the courthouse, the accused lawyer Leonard Tallier said the latest developments should expedite the trial.
It's not a matter of happiness, it's to ensure that justice is done one way or the other, right? And that's what we're concerned with.
During pre-trial proceedings, the accused's defense tried 2 separate times to change this to a judge-alone trial, but Judge Glenn Joyal rejected both motions. Crown prosecutors say a jury is no longer needed because of the complexity of the NCR defense, and Skibicki has admitted killing the 4 women. Something family are grateful for because they say they no longer have to sit through a trial full of witness testimony and gruesome details.
My nieces, the rest of us, are happy we're not going to have to be put through that.
The trial will continue on May 8th. The judge has asked for the jury to come in on that morning so that he could thank them for their commitment and dismiss them. TR Wheatley, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
For more coverage of this trial, head over to aptnnews.ca, where you can see stories from our web reporter, Kathleen Martins. If you were at the Forks in Winnipeg last night, you may have witnessed what some people are calling the largest turnout for the 4th annual MMIWG2S Walk for Justice. An estimated 1,000 people came out to show their support for the survivors and families of missing and murdered Indigenous women, girls, and Two-Spirit people. Sav Jonesa reports.
As singers called out the names of missing and murdered Indigenous people, supporters danced in a circle while holding hands with strangers. But though the crowd of roughly 1,000 people might not all know each other, many share a similar story of a loved one gone too soon with no answers. Lindsay Chartier says it's a blessing to be around community, even if the circumstances are sad.
Yes, every year it keeps growing, and us as Indigenous people need to unite and be kind towards each other and have more love and compassion, and Like, it's so beautiful. Like, why wouldn't you want to be here?
Winnipeg's 4th annual MMIW G2S Walk for Justice is taking place during what some may call a pivotal moment for the MMIW G2S movement. Just days prior, the governments of Canada and Manitoba announced a partnership to create what they call a Red Dress Alert. The pilot project will notify Manitobans when an Indigenous woman, girl, or Two-Spirit person goes missing. It's good news to filmmaker and MMIW survivor Jody Lee Pacey.
Finally. I think finally it's about time.
Pacey says there's still more to be done for those living with trauma.
There should be more supports for survivors too. Yeah.
What supports do you think of when you say that?
Like therapy groups, like support groups, like specifically.
Last week began the trial of an alleged serial killer who is charged in the deaths of 4 Indigenous women. Mercedes Myron is one of the few whose remains are believed to lay in a landfill just north of Winnipeg. Myron's sister Jordan co-organized the event.
This next month is going to be extremely hard for me and my family as well as the other families. So to have all the support is just amazing, and I love that how many people come out time and time again to support us. It's very great.
Chartier says the event is a great place for the community to share their voices of sorrow and hope for justice.
There's a lot of people that don't get justice. They don't find their missing ones. And I hope they're able to get through it with coming to things like this.
Sav Jonesa, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
Indigenous students at a Halifax university hosted a Red Dress Day event. One of the key speakers was the daughter of Anna May Akwash. Angel Moore has the story.
Red dresses marked the May 5th event. Student and artist Peggy Fair handed out miniature versions to the crowd. She is from the Degodi Dechadin First Nation in the Northwest Territories.
I made little felt dresses to represent the missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls, and so that we can all keep it close to our heart.
The Indigenous Student Center team at Mount St. Vincent University hosted the event. Denise Picto-Maloney spoke to about 30 people who attended. Maloney is an activist and says,
"We're tired of trying to fight for our basic, inherent right to survive."
Maloney is the daughter of Annie Mae Pictou Akwash. Akwash was murdered in South Dakota in 1975 by members of the American Indian Movement. The high-profile case was one of many that led to the MMIWG report and calls to justice. Maloney says 5 years later, after the report, the calls to justice are still not implemented.
The formula's there, the steps are there, you just need to implement them. And the arguments over who has the responsibility to do it and who's accountable for that's a big tale of how minimalist our women have become in this country and how we are not priority, and we're high risk.
Fair also lost a loved one to violence. Her friend, Nicole Patty, was 33 years old when she was killed by a hit-and-run driver 3 years ago.
Today was important to me because I myself have lost someone to the missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls National Inquiry. Her name was Nicole Patty. Lost her in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, and her murder is yet to be solved, so it's close to my heart.
Maloney believes women have the power to hold the government accountable and offers some advice.
So what women can do is start getting more vocal. I mean, I understand that it's risky to speak up, but if you are in places where you can tell people and encourage people to read, and to embrace those 231 and hold and write your MLAs, write your governments on what they're doing in protecting our women.
Angel Moore, APTN National News, Jabuktuk, also known as Halifax.
A Red Dress vigil was held in Ottawa on Sunday. It was hosted by the family of Sisters in Spirit. A feast and a giveaway was part of the event. Here's Annette Francis with that story.
Red dresses line the walkways of Strathcona Park along the Rideau River in Ottawa. In spite of the wet weather, families are here to support each other.
Come and eat, come and have a bite.
Bridget Tolley has been organizing these events for decades.
Because we honor and remember our stolen sisters. One of our stolen sisters is also my mother. She was struck and killed in 2001 by the Quebec police. So we try to do our best to honor and remember our sisters, plus help the families and give them strength to continue to fight for truth, accountability, and justice.
It's the second Red Dress event that Ottawa City Councillor Stephanie Plant has attended this week. She says it's a reminder that there's a lot of work left to do.
We know Manitoba had their Red Dress alert system put in place yesterday, but it's not enough, and these kinds of issues will continue to be problems, and it will continue to be problematic as long as we don't take corrective action. Now, at the municipal level, we did the Annie Puruguk Park, not far from here, in 2021. We will have the Mary Papatsi Park, hopefully by the end of 2024. And, you know, we're always in conversation with our federal and provincial counterparts as to what we can do at that level as well.
There was plenty of food to eat, crafts and red t-shirts to be given away. Colleen Hill-Cardinal says it's a way to come together to build community and honor feast loved ones.
My late sister, Gina, was killed in 1990. My sisters and I we were 60 Scoop survivors, and my sister had a hard life as a child, and you know, a lot of what we've been through as children has led us to be vulnerable as young adults, and I think it directly led to her being murdered.
Annette Francis, APTN National News, Ottawa.
The Manitoba government announced a new $15 million endowment fund to support MMIWG2S+ families to mark Sunday's Red Dress Day. It will be run by the Winnipeg Foundation, and funds from that endowment will be used for families to be able to access the services, care, and support they need. Organizations that are Indigenous-led and working with MMIWG families can also expect help from the endowment. Manitoba Families Minister Nahani Fontaine says the goal is to see it grow from $15 to $50 million with donations from the public, businesses, and corporate entities. The initial investment is expected to generate up to $750,000 per year, which will be paid out in grants.
The range of supports that families need vary. Some family members want to be able to go to school. So they need, you know, maybe monies for books or tuition or daycare, whatever it is. So it's a wide range of supports that this endowment fund will be able to support.
2 men in Alberta convicted in the deaths of 2 Métis hunters had their appeals dismissed today. We'll bring you more on that after the break. Welcome back to APTN National News. 1 woman is dead and 2 teenagers are in custody facing second-degree murder charges after an incident in Easterville, Manitoba over the weekend. At 1:45 a.m., Chemawawan RCMP responded to a report of a disturbance at a home in Easterville. They found a 32-year-old woman in critical condition. Paramedics could not save her, and she died of her injuries. A second victim, a 35-year-old woman with non-life-threatening injuries, was then located a short distance away. She was taken to hospital in Winnipeg and remains in stable condition. RCMP arrested 2 girls in connection to the homicide, a 13-year-old and a 14-year-old. Both remain in custody. RCMP Major Crimes Forensic Identification Services and Chemawawan RCMP are continuing their investigation this week. Last Saturday evening around 7:50 p.m., South Indian Lake RCMP responded to a report of a deceased male in a wooded area outside the Opipan-Napawin Cree Nation. Officers later found the body of a 61-year-old man with injuries to his body. No arrests have been made in connection with this incident. His death is now being treated as a homicide, and that investigation continues. And on the Lake St. Martin First Nation in the Interlake region of Manitoba, RCMP Major Crimes arrested a 15-year-old boy in relation to the shooting of a 32-year-old woman at a home there. The shooting happened last Wednesday around 9 a.m. Gypsumville RCMP found the deceased woman shortly after. The 15-year-old has been charged with second-degree murder and remains in custody. That investigation is ongoing. All of the suspects arrested in all 3 incidents so far are under the age of 18 and cannot be named. Roger and Anthony Bilodeau, the two men convicted in the deaths of Métis hunters Jacob Sansom and Maurice Cardinal, each had their conviction appeals heard today in Edmonton. APTN's Chris Stewart joins us with the details. Chris, what can you tell us from today?
Roger Bilodeau was convicted in 2022 of manslaughter in the 2020 deaths of Jacob Sansom and Maurice Cardinal after a high-speed chase on a rural road involving himself and his son Anthony. Roger Bilodeau called his son Anthony and told him to meet him and to bring a gun. Roger Bilodeau was sentenced to 10 years in prison. Video security cameras caught Anthony Bilodeau shooting both men, and both Bilodeaus left the two hunters for dead. Anthony Bilodeau was convicted of second-degree murder in the two men's deaths and sentenced to life in prison with no chance of parole for 13 years. Today, a three-judge panel dismissed Anthony Bilodeau's conviction and sentence appeal by a unanimous vote. Roger Bilodeau lost his conviction and sentence appeal by a 2-to-1 vote, meaning he has the option of appealing to the Supreme Court. I spoke to Gina Levasseur, the sister of Jacob Sansom and niece of Maurice Cardinal, for her reaction to today's decision.
It's really hard. It's very, very hard. It's a sense of relief that Anthony's conviction won't be overturned and that he will be staying there. It's a little worrisome because Roger's decision, there was one judge on his panel that was for his appeal decision, and so that means in the spring Roger can reapply. And every time they reapply, every time we go through this process, the parole hearings, the, visitation, anything that happens in these men's lives, we're informed and we are brought back to day one from when we lost the most two important people in our lives.
Roger is now on day parole, while Anthony is not eligible for parole until 2035. Back to you at the studio.
First Nation leaders in British Columbia are calling for an inquiry into police-related deaths of Indigenous people. They want to know why cops are never charged, even after the province's Independent Investigations Office says they should be. APTN's Tina House joins us from Vancouver.
Thank you. Joining me today is Hugh Breaker of the First Nations Summit. Hugh, now we've had a lot of issues in the past with police and also killing of Indigenous people. What would you like to say about what's happening right now?
Well, the First Nations Leadership Council has demanded an inquiry, a public inquiry, into what we believe are inordinate number of First Nations people who are being killed by the police or who are dying while in custody of the police. And we'd like it to be independent. We're tired of police investigating police. That's not proving fruitful in this province. We've had two very large profile occurrences in the past couple of weeks where large numbers of police have had charges either dropped or they're not proceeding with charges. And both of those cases in Prince George and Campbell River involve the deaths of First Nations people.
I mean, we've been covering these stories for years now, going from Dale Culver to Jared. I mean, let's talk about what it means for the community to have faith in the police anymore when it comes to all these high numbers of killings, as you say.
There's a long history of First Nations people being jaded about the justice system in BC. It didn't just start recently. It started when the police started helping DIA officials and church officials from taking children away from their families for residential school. It started with the raids of our potlatches. And so that's when it started. Now it continues today with the deaths of First Nations people and the failure to put charges against the police. And so it's a long history of a jaded and no faith in the justice system whatsoever.
This inquiry, does the Leadership Council envision, obviously, First Nations people on that committee?
I would hope so. You may recall that there was a death in Tofino, and there they appointed a First Nations person to oversee what was happening so that they would be keeping abreast of information. And we think that can certainly be followed, but even more, we should have First Nation people actually sitting on whatever the inquiry body is that's going to look into it.
We've had so many inquiries going from the murdered missing women to what's happening with the fish. How can we guarantee and how can we see that these inquiry recommendations are actually followed through if there is to be one?
That is the problem, and we need commitment from government that they're going to follow through with the recommendations. The Attorney General and the Solicitor General, both in British Columbia, must step forward and give assurances that these are going to be followed through with.
Thank you so much for joining us today. I always appreciate all your words. Thank you so much. Back to you in studio.
A former chief of the Enoch Cree Nation will represent the Conservatives in an Alberta riding in the next federal election. Billy Morin won the Conservative nomination for the newly created Edmonton Northwest constituency over the weekend. In 2015, he was elected Enoch's youngest chief in modern history. Morin also served as the Grand Chief of the Confederacy of Treaty 6 First Nations. The election is expected to take place next year. The federal government is investing $45 million to address landslide issues near Whitehorse. We'll tell you more about it after the break. Welcome back. Time now for our photo of the day. Kenneth O'Keefe shares the sun shining through his cherry trees in Abbotsford, British Columbia on a sunny spring day. Beautiful view on a beautiful day. Thank you for sharing that, Kenneth. Be sure to send your pictures to share@aptn.ca to be our next photo of the day. Now let's take a look at tomorrow's weather forecast. Over on the East Coast, 20 degrees and rain for Halifax, Charlottetown plus 15. Nain, snowy 2 degrees there, Happy Valley, Goose Bay plus 10. Montreal, sunshine and 21 degrees there, Quebec City plus 18. Sarnia, rainy and 22 degrees, North Bay, sunshine and 19. Timmins, sunshine, 18 degrees there, Wawa, sunny and plus 20. God's Lake, sunshine, 16 degrees there, Norway House, plus 19. Winnipeg, rainy and 17 degrees, Barons River, plus 19. Regina, 14 above and rain there, North Battleford, rainy and 14 as well. Stony Rapids, 17 degrees and mostly sunny. Buffalo Narrows, rainy and 10 degrees. Rainy and 16 for Grand Prairie, rainy and plus 13 for Fort Chip. Calgary, rainy and 6 degrees there, Red Deer, plus 7 and rain. Penticton, mix of sun and clouds, 16 degrees, 19 and rainy for Kamloops. Prince George, sunny and 12 degrees there, Prince Rupert, rainy and plus 12. Watson Lake, rainy and 11 degrees, Mayo, plus 12 and rainy there as well. Watee, mix of sun and cloud, 18 degrees, rainy and plus 16 for Fort Simpson. Paulatuck, sunshine, 0 degrees there, Colville Lake, plus 4. Baker Lake, -1, mix of sun and cloud, RV at -1 as well. Igloolik, snowy and -1, Clyde River, snow and -6. The federal government is investing over $45 million into a landslide escarpment near downtown Whitehorse. A major landslide in 2022 sent debris down the escarpment onto an access road and into the Yukon River, causing major infrastructure damage. The escarpment continues to experience slides caused by the impacts of climate change. The funding, which comes from the Disaster Mitigation and Adaptation Fund, will support revegetation, expand debris barriers, and implement anti-erosion measures such as removing rocks and dirt. The Federal Minister of Emergency Preparedness was in Whitehorse Monday to make the announcement.
There are certain leadership within certain parties that still don't believe that climate change is real, and we're seeing the impacts right behind us having this, and these investments are absolutely critical.
That's all the time we have for your Monday news. For news anytime, go to our website, aptnnews.ca, and be sure to catch our new daytime edition of APTN News airing at 1 p.m. Eastern, 12 p.m. Central on weekdays. I'm Savannah Kelly, Marcy Miigwich. Have a great night.